You're listening to Investify, preaching financial independence and assisting investors to achieve a more flexible and free lifestyle through smart financial planning and real estate investing. If leaving the corporate world and jumping into this thriving industry is what you desire, tune in and listen to stories of like-minded individuals who made the leap to financial independence. Equip yourself with the right tips and tricks to start your real estate journey, making active or passive ventures that are highly profitable and rewarding.
What's going on, everybody? You are listening to Investify. My name is Craig Kurloff, aka the Fi Guy, and I'm here with my co-host, Eric Yu. Hello, Eric Yu. What is up,
What's
my
up?
man?
What's up?
Hey.
How's it going? Hello, Eric. You here? I'm doing well.
Good, man.
Doing
Good.
well. Thanks
Good
for
to.
having me as a guest host today. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Thanks so much for hopping on. I have to say, you're not as good looking as Ziana, but I guess you'll have to do.
I can't meet that high bar, you know.
Yeah. So if you haven't already known or you didn't listen to last week's episode, Ziana has decided to step down as co-host, as Investify. Again, no hard feelings. We still love Ziana. She just had a lot on her plate. And, sometimes you have to let go of some things to make room for other things. And this was just one of those things. And so, of course, make sure you wish Ziana well. But, we're certainly going to keep the show going. We're going to keep bringing you great content. And today does not disappoint. We had our friend Andrew Syrios on the show. And Eric, yeah, like what did you think of Andrew? And I guess tell us a little bit about you too while we're at it, because people maybe not know too much about you.
For sure. Yeah, I was on the podcast a couple months back. I'm Eric. I've been doing real estate for a little over, 2.5, 3 years now. Got started in real estate with my first house hack and did some Airbnb and haven't looked back since. Picked up a couple more units along the way and starting to dabble in some rehab as well. But yeah, this show was awesome, man. Andrew's such an advanced investor. He's been through all the ups and downs, the '08 crisis, so lots of knowledge that he's picked up over the years, and definitely had some good stuff to talk about for the current state of the market as well.
Yeah, I love that he kind of talks. He's been through a full cycle at this point. I think now that the market's kind of coming back down, he started in like the mid 2000s and he's been through that full cycle. So he's seen the ups and the downs. He's seen high interest rates and low property prices and vice versa. And I'm sure there's more. Every market cycle is a little bit different, but he's got some experience that he's sharing with us today. So let's go ahead and bring Andrew on the show. Andrew Syrios, welcome to the show, my friend. How you doing today, man?
Good. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Good to be here.
Yeah, man. It's been a long time coming. I think we met like a few years ago, for sure. I think at FinCon, or were you at FinCon?
I think it was the BP conference.
BP Con, okay. Yeah, I think in Nashville, maybe on one of them rooftops, we were having some drinks, and I had way too many drinks.
Pre-COVID and the before times, I think.
Yeah, I think we had the BC before COVID. Yeah. But also, Andrew, well, hey, you've obviously got tons of experience, but we want to hear the beginning times, the genesis story as to when you first found out about real estate, found out about financial independence, and what made you want to go down that path.
Yeah, I mean, I think my story is a little bit different than most because I was pretty like I went to college. I was getting a business degree, and kind of just going that direction when my dad kind of pulled me towards real estate because he had gotten into real estate investment quite some time before that. He started in the early '80s in Portland, Oregon. He has actually a funny story where he bought a house. His first ever house he purchased, he bought for I think $63,000 in Portland in like the mid '80s or thereabout, and then he sold it he put a little money into it. He realized he didn't know what he was doing. He tried to do the rehab himself, just kind of went very sideways. Sold it for $70,000, and then ran into that guy that he sold it to in 2013. And the guy's like, yeah, hey, he sold it. And he's like, yeah, I just saw it just sold again, just now, back in 2012, 2013 or thereabout. And it's like, it sold for $950,000. Like, oh. so
Oh man.
so that's yeah, buy and hold exactly. So my dad had gotten started into real estate and sort of this. He had just always liked houses. He told me one time he looked at an amortization table, and that kind of made him like, it's like, oh, if I can just hold on, if I can just get the rent to mostly pay for everything, then eventually I'll own the house free and clear. Not even including any appreciation or any other benefits that come along with the real estate investment. And so he tried that while he was in Portland in the 80s, and realized that rehabbing wasn't really his thing. This was kind of he should have done house hacking, but he kind of tried to do like he's renting a house and trying to buy an investment property on the side, and like really getting in without knowing what he was doing. And that went nowhere. But he tried again in '89 when he moved to Eugene, Oregon, which is where I basically grew up. And he had a bout with I think some food poisoning, and while he was sick in bed, he read a book that kind of told that the thesis of it was that you need to treat any business you have as a business. Like, you cannot have it's not a hobby, no matter how small it is you treat it as a business. And so he started, like, he didn't have an office, so he would like his first rental, he would go to the local Wendy's to sign leases. He wouldn't do it in their house in the unit or in his own home. It was like, this is a business relationship, and the Wendy's will be my office. Anything like that. And once he started taking a business mindset to it, he started actually having some success, and he started buying, particularly around the University of Oregon. His entire strategy there was to kind of arbitrage houses from being working regular just family homes to student houses. So like anything right next to the campus was student housing. And then when you got to the next kind of ring around it, like a second circle around the campus, those houses were kind of a mishmash. And so if you find one that's renting out to a family, and they're selling, and you buy it for market value, and then you can just take that house, and now you turn it into a student rental, because it's kind of in the middle area, is between where it can be it could be either or. We turn it to a student rental, all of a sudden the rents go up because you're renting by the bedroom. And so, you might rent a 4-bedroom house for $1,500 to a family, whereas you can rent the $500 a bedroom to students, and it's $2,000. And then he'd find ways to carve up houses into he'd carve up these houses, find any way feasible to add bedrooms. And then that's more or less when we got into that's more or less when I came into the story, when he was kind of wrapping up student housing had sort of done its course, and he was looking for the next thing, and while at the same point I was graduating from college.
Damn, Andrew. So it sounds like your dad was literally doing the rent by the room like way before it was cool. And so if I'm getting this right, he started doing this in like the late 80s, 89.
Yes.
And went all the way until like 20 years or so, like until 2015.
I mean, they're still doing student rentals. He still has those student rentals around the University of Oregon. And while it's not, he doesn't rent by the room generally, like try to get a group of 4, 5, 6 students together. It's like the rent price is by the room. So like the listing will be like $600 a room, total being $2,400. If it's a really challenging market, and there's a lot of, they can't get them all leased up, they'd consider doing leases by the room, but that can be a little bit more challenging, just because you never know when you're going to put 2 people together that just cannot at all get along. I mean, that can happen with groups that are planning to be together, but the odds of it go up when you start mixing and matching people in the same house that don't know each other from the beginning. So, yeah.
I see. So he's preferring. So he's taken this. He marketed as $600 per room, but ideally he wants like a group of 4 friends in this 4-bedroom house to give him $2,400, and that's the market. So he's not really doing it separate, which is kind of like how we do it today, where we do it separately, and there's certainly a lot more tenant screening and a lot more risk to go behind that. So super cool. So I mean, so again, a crazy, like, innovative, I think, for that time. I don't think there was bigger pockets, or even Rich Dad Poor Dad was out at that time. So
no, and the risk part actually is a little bit less than we would think, because you get all the parents to co-sign with student rentals. So if you've got a house with 5 bedrooms, and you've got 5 different students there, then you've got 5 parents that are co-signing. You've got a lot of people to go after to get your money back. So his collections was like over 99%. So that's a major advantage of student housing. Student housing is a little tricky market now. It kind of got discovered after the Great Recession because nothing else in real estate was working, and then they realized, oh, student housing still is, and so they started building all sorts of apartments. The one advantage, though, that may in some markets might be there is they started tearing down houses by these universities and building these giant apartments, and often really kind of dumpy one, like just like 3 bed, 1 bath, just throw them up kind of things. And so houses still have a lot of demand, especially like, the people kind of want to live in a mini frat or a mini sorority. So there's still definitely a market for that kind of thing. But it did kind of that idea did kind of get discovered in the early teens.
Okay. And so then how did you get involved here? So like did you jump in on the student stuff, or where do you come into the picture?
The student stuff has sort of been semi played out. It was the market was so expensive enough that it was hard to find good deals when I came in. I came in around 2006, 2005, 2006, which was interesting. My dad decided to do an internship. So my junior year, a couple of other people from the U of O and actually Oregon State University came on, and we started doing all the finding motivated sellers and sending out letters to absentee owners and foreclosures and stuff like that. And that was an interesting kind of wild experience because there's a bunch of us and we were trying to figure it out, and eventually I moved up to Salem, and we were trying to buy and hold, and then something happened around 07, 08, I think most are familiar with, and we really started moving away from holding. This was just after I graduated college, and so we were doing a lot of the really old school, sending mailers and driving for dollars and some bandit signs and things like that, and that quickly we had to quickly switch to flipping because nothing holding was kind of nuts that period of time, and we really got into short sales. And so at that short sales, I assume as many in your audience know, it's just when the bank takes less for the house than the mortgages. So they're almost unheard of nowadays, but they were very common back then. Everybody was underwater on their mortgage. They were getting 100% fully financed, negatively amortized, loans, and then they were just not making any of the payments, and they added all these fees, and so the market was collapsing. So you have a house worth $125,000 that they had $180,000 loan on or something like that. Maybe that's a bit extreme. Try to get the bank to take 90 for it or 100, and off. There was a period of time, sort of like late 2010. Or maybe no, probably like late 2009, early 2010, where these banks were just like giving it away, And then so we were doing that for a while and had pretty good success, especially. But then two things happened at the same time, and that is the banks just tightened they just realized, no, we don't want to give these short sales away anymore. We'll give you like a 9% discount, but nothing more. And there was this first-time home buyer tax credit, or no, not tax. It was just a first-time home buyer credit. It was like $8,500 for somebody buying their first house if they haven't bought a house before, and that disappeared. And like the same month that like banks tightened their criteria, now there's nothing more you couldn't buy nearly as easily. All of a sudden, they were like pending sales fell in half. I think it was in half. It was sometime in the middle of 2010, and that just pretty much ended that. There was no more short sales, at least for the time being. And so that's when we started kind of grasping for the next thing to do, and that's how I eventually made my way out to Kansas City. Yeah.
Awesome, Andrew. It sounds like you've been through the ringer. You've seen a lot in the markets over the years, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners would be really curious to hear what's your take right now on the current real estate market, and how are you thinking about it in terms of approaching and acquiring right now?
Yeah, it's a tricky market to say the least. It almost feels like, unlike in 08 we had a collapse. I feel like we've sort of had a freeze now, because rates have gone way up. I just got quoted by one bank at like 7 3/4 or something like that, and we have back in 2008, everyone had these, or there was a bunch of these teaser rates. There's these fully amortized ones. You go from 4% mortgage to a 9%, and then all of a sudden everybody's not paying their mortgage and going nuts now. Nowadays, on my home, my personal residence, I have a 3% mortgage amortized for 30 years, and it's fixed for the entire period. And everyone seems to have something like that. So there's no impetus to sell. Like I don't see myself ever selling or refinancing this house. That mortgage is too good. It's never going to get back to 3%. And then I keep hearing people telling me they have like 2.5% loan. They got a 2.25% loan. It's just these utterly ridiculous rates. And so there's no real. There's not much of it. Like if somebody's like, I need to sell my house right now, I just be like, just rent your house and go rent where you're going. Like, there's no reason to, like, that'd be the probably biggest piece of advice I'd give them. If you have to, I mean, buy where you're going too, if you can, but if that's a challenge, just rent what you have now and rent where you're going. There's no, if you have a 2% mortgage on your house, you need to keep that forever. And so we've seen prices decline some, but they haven't declined that much. And inventory, like the number of new listings, has declined a lot. And I think that's going to just kind of be the status quo until rates go back down.
Andrew, is there like a benchmark you'd say? Like, so I'd say like there's a few people with 2%. There's probably more people in the 3%.
Yeah.
When are you at a point where you're like, hey, I've got a 5% mortgage on this. Like, it's okay to sell it. Where would your barometer be?
I mean, I would say if you have a 5%, it's perfectly fine to sell it. Probably sub 4 is where you should start being like, this is not something I should sell at any time. But it's also one of those things where if you think you'd have to take a hit on it, like if you're at a house where you'd have to bring a little bit of money to closing, which is probably not the case in general because the market's only gone down a little bit. It's like 5%. Whereas if you bought back when they were 5% mortgages, you probably have 50, 70, $80, $100,000 of equity in your house. So I would probably want to protect any mortgage I had that was under 4% right now.
Mm-hmm.
And if it was, but even still, it's like there's no I think that'd be the line, probably around 4%. And
okay,
yeah,
cool. So let's bring it back kind of to that.
Mm-hmm.
2006, 2007, 2008 timeframe, or maybe even 2010, where
Yeah.
you're buying short sales. You're kind of through that season. And when you were buying these, you were just buying them from the bank. You probably have to buy them cash, and then you just rent them out and then refinance them. Is that kind of how that process works?
Yeah. So the basic, when it comes to short sales, we were marketing to people who were behind on their mortgage, and the idea was we're going to assume that most of these people need a short sale for it to work for us, and so when they come to us and we'd say like, hey, and we also marketed to real estate agents. That was one of the things we did a lot. We'd market to real estate agents. Do you have somebody who's behind on their mortgage? If you do, we can be a buyer, because one of the biggest problems with short sales, and we might see some of this again. Short sales is something to keep your eye on. I don't think there's going to be a ton of them, but it's something to keep your eye on now. The biggest problem is the bank's not going to negotiate with you unless you have an offer. And the problem is the bank is going to take 3 to 6 months to negotiate with you because banks are slow. They're like, it's like slightly, just barely faster than the DMV. And so, so you've got, most homeowners are on a schedule that just doesn't work for them. They need to move faster, so they're just going to move on to the next one. So our big advantage there was we were like, we can wait as long as we want. We have no rush at all, and we know all the documents that they need. We can explain it to the real estate agent, like, these are the documents the bank's going to need. We know how to get a hold of their short sale negotiators. So there's all those advantages in that respect, and so we just started creating this mill, and it operated really well for a while. What hurt us is that we had a lot of overhead. We literally brought on people to negotiate short sales, and once that slowed down, especially when banks tightened up and that first-time homebuyer the first-time homebuyer credit or whatever it was, once that went away, it was like we were still carrying this large overhead. We needed to do a number of deals per month, but both our number of deals went down, and our profit went down. We were making like a couple thousand each deal, and it's just then we started running into the red, and we kind of had to shut that down because that's one of the issues a lot of flippers and wholesalers have is you have to buy to deal with your overhead. And so that's something we should keep a very close eye on, because that's kind of what we ran into trouble on in that respect. But yeah, short sales. Oh, we also did a few subject twos. Those are something I think it would be worth keeping your eye on as well. Or actually, those are worth now, because that's the other thing you can do is people who have a 3% mortgage. If they're willing to sell it to you and allow you to buy with the subject to the existing financing, that you might not get a great deal equity wise, but getting that interest rate might make it very much worth your time.
Yeah, I think sub two today is becoming more and more popular, because if you did want to sell, and honestly, like with I'm thinking of a property that I have. I've got like a 3.25% interest rate on it, and I probably got like 400,000 of equity in it. And so, like, if somebody wanted to take on my mortgage and give me an extra 25 grand or something, like I probably would do that. Right? Like you're still getting it. Like I'm able to get more than I would otherwise. It just kind of depends on, if your lender allows you to do the subject to financing and the risks. Now, if you are selling as a subject to, are there risks with that? Like if the buyer does not pay the mortgage or?
Yeah, if you're selling as a subject to, the main thing to look for is that the person you're selling to or the institution you're selling to is very, very much above board. You'd want to do like a deep dive on them, because you are relying on them to protect your credit by making mortgage payments. So that if it's just some random guy saying like, "Hey, I buy houses," and like, why don't you assign your mortgage over to me? That would make me very suspicious. I would not do that. It would need to be someone with a long track record, a good reputation. I'd probably want to call references, kind of thing. If I was selling the subject to, and buying from it, the other thing about it is this. If I was selling subject to, I'd want to be careful in another respect, because you have a mortgage in your name, but that property is not bringing you any income, and it's not your home. And so it could affect your debt to income ratio trying to get loans from banks in the future. So, and this is something that if you're buying subject to, you should be very above board about this, because if you have somebody who's got a 2.5% interest mortgage on a house, you very well will not want to refinance that mortgage until it goes literally down to zero. But they very well might want to, buy a house 3 or 4 years from now. So that could create a conflict, especially since they can't force you to pay off that mortgage. I mean, they could tell the bank, and the bank might get a bank has the right on any subject to call the loan due. But then, if they don't, it's their credit on the line. If you don't refinance or pay off the house, their credit is shot. So I don't think that they don't have much leverage there, but I think just kind of as being like kind of a ethical above board investor, you need to be honest. You need to be honest with them about what the issues could be here. And you need to be like, what is your plan? How long do you need to hold it that way? Preferably if they're never if they're, retiring or whatever, or they're not looking to buy another house, or they already have another home and that's going to be it, then it might not be any issue at all. But that is something definitely to discuss with anyone you're looking to buy from the subject to.
There's definitely a lot to look into for subject to. I'm curious, back in that timeline when you were doing a bit more subject to, what were, some of the main reasonings why sellers would be interested in doing subject to with you? What were some of the things that you were seeing, and, how did you find these sellers that were open to it?
I think the sellers that were open to subject to were usually motivated. The thing about it is, like, the more creative the deal is, it needs to either be a more motivated seller or a market that is not conducive to selling. Like, it's very hard to get somebody to do seller financing or subject to or anything like that. Say 2 years ago, when if they listed their house with Joe Schmo down the block, it would sell. It would get 10 offers in a week. So at that point, it's hard to make the case to anybody that they should do anything creative. But if they have a property that needs significant work, they have a property that isn't zoned correctly, or they're behind on their mortgage payments and they need to move, something along those lines, all of a sudden it becomes more advantageous to them. And so that was back then. That was the big case. Like, the market was, collapsed. There weren't that many buyers, and that made it challenging. Is also there weren't that many lenders, like institutional bank lenders. And so it's like that was why we were so interested in getting seller financing, getting subject to, or private loans, which is really what we've settled in on is private lenders. We don't do much subject to, or we haven't done subject to for a long time. We're looking to it now particularly because of this market. We rarely do seller financing. We usually use private lenders, but it was basically because there weren't many banks to lend, but they were willing to do it because the market was so broken. Nowadays, the market is more frozen. So it's like there are less buyers, but the prices are still high. But maybe they're willing to do things like that to get their property sold because they don't want to wait on it, and it could be, especially if they want what it could have sold for 6 months ago, 9 months ago. They need to be a little bit more creative on what kind of financing terms they offer.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. I know there's a lot of people predicting that there's going to be housing drops, but like you've been already talking about for a little while, like when people have these like sub 4%, sub 3% rates, they're going to hold on to inventory. We're not going to see much inventory increase because the monthly payments are so low as they are. And then, as you're talking about sub 2, I love what you said about motivation, right? Like you could spend 100 door knocks on sellers that aren't motivated and get nowhere. But that moment you find that one motivated person, it's so much easier to come up with something creative, make something happen. And I think that's something
Absolutely.
that a lot of people forget, like you can't just keep knocking on that same door of a person who's like, oh, I'm not really into it. But you're going to find those people, the more doors you knock, that are super motivated, ready to go. And
Mhm.
I think, you really touched on a great point there.
No, absolutely. It's motivation, and particularly with regards to what the market is. And so we have this market right now is really tricky because it's hard the prices are still kind of high and the rates are terrible. So but at the same time that there is more motivation in the market. There are more sellers that are motivated. So, a year ago there were very, very few motivated sellers. Now there's more, and there's more opportunities for that kind of stuff. And particularly with subject to is kind of a nice little niche there at this time because it's hard it's hard to make anything cash flow with the 7% interest loan when it's at the prices just tiny bit below what the prices the highs from the middle of 2022.
Yeah, for sure. Yes, I noticed that you touched on private lending for a moment there. I'd love to hear a bit more about, what you're doing there, because I think a lot of people have, heard of the idea of private lending. They know a little bit about, the kinds of rates that you can get, but they don't know it as much on the lender side of things, right? So I'd love to hear,
Yeah.
your experiences there and what brought you to that space.
Yeah, I mean, well, we don't lend our own money out, but we borrow a lot. So if it's regards to finding private lenders, is that kind of where your question was going? Finding private lenders, or how
Yeah,
to
finding private lenders.
Mhm. Private lender. I mean, the easiest private lenders you're going to find are, I guess, angel investors. Parents, siblings, those types. If you have somebody who's close to you who has a decent, some money that they can afford to lose, I would probably make that a caveat here. You should not be going after your parents' retirement funds. That is a really good place. That's your best place to start. I would say that it is so much easier to find private lenders and to convince them to come on board if you have deals under your belt. And that sounds sort of, uh, it sounds sort of like a doom saying, like, oh, well, how do you get deals under your belt if you can't get private lenders? And that's why I think, house hacking is really the way that probably 90+% of people should start. It's the way to get in is obviously buy your book first, Craig, and then you live in the house, and or even better, buy a fourplex with an FHA loan or something like that. Live in one unit, rent out the other three. You only need to put 3.5% down. Yeah, nowadays the rates are not going to be anywhere close to what they were a year ago. But that's there's still opportunities there. By getting in and doing a house hack where you move in, you buy your own house, you live in it, you fix it up, or something along those lines. Then, and you get that homeowner rate, then you need to stay there for a year if it's an FHA loan, and then refinance with a bank. Or a lot of banks. I bought 2 homes, personal homes. Both of them gave me 95% loans. So there's loans, and they neither were FHA. So there's plenty of loans like that where you're only putting like 5% down. That, and you're getting a much better rate. And that really is the way to start. Now, once you've done a couple of those deals, you have real estate investment experience. And having real estate investment experience is, I mean, it's a sad thing about human psychology, but nobody really wants to be first, you know? And so if you can show people, like, the way I'd probably say it, like, if you're looking for private lenders is just get a pen and pad and think, like, what are 10 people who have money probably and might be interested in this, and try to write it down, you know? And then if you can think of 10, try to think of 10 more, and then try to think of 10 more. And then, you know, then build a sort of both a business plan. And even if you don't have any investment spirits, if you have a solid business plan, like how you plan to find properties, how you plan to refinance and rehab them, you know, who you know in the business, you know, even maybe books you've read is a little bit much to put in there, but, like, you know, make it so you know what you're talking about. And then any experience you have, and it could be experience that's not directly related to real estate. Have you been, you know, have you worked in finance? Have you been a real estate agent? Have you been a mortgage broker? Have you been insurance? You know, something in anything business related really is helpful in this regard. And so you have all of this, and then, you know, start, you know, asking people to lunch, or just kind of talking, like, you know, talking through it, like letting people know you're kind of planting seeds and whatnot. And let everyone know that you're a real estate investor. You know, I'm investing in real estate. You know, we look for private loans to fund that, doing BRRRR deals and that kind of thing. But I do think early on, in particular, house hacking and using the kind of much better loan terms, even in this higher interest rate environment, much better loan terms that are available to homeowners, and starting that way, and, you know, living in the place and then moving out and kind of just playing hopscotch, you know, from one house hopping, you know, from one house to the next, getting experience. And then if you tell people, like, yeah, I want private lenders, I've done, you know, 3 real estate deals or 2 real estate deals, even 2, even 1. I've lived in my home, and this is the second one. I already bought one that I've just rented out. That's like, oh, you've already done this once, I can trust you to do it again. So with private lenders, I do think just starting with your circle of contacts, and going from my dad's first private lender was his father. Like, that's it's one of the and then moving from there and trying to plant a lot of seeds, and always telling people, going to a lot of networking events, telling people, always, you know, you never know who has money, who might be interested in this. But I do think, like, while it's not something you just give up on if you haven't done any deals, but I do think house hacking is the way to go to start, because that, once you've done, somebody will be, it's not like 0 to 1 is a huge difference. The confidence somebody will have in you if you've done one deal is way above what they'll have in you if you've done none. So
for sure, man. Yeah, I want to say one thing too. I think the word of the day is going to be house scotching. That's going to be, I'm going to take that
house
term.
scotching.
Hot scotching, yeah, jumping from house to house. I think you're right, man. Dude, like, house hacking is obviously the surefire way to get started. I would say 95% of real estate investors this day and age start with house hacking. Andrew, I'm going to put you in that 5% because there are some anomalies. But
yeah,
I kind of
starting as an intern. An intern for your father's company is probably like, yeah, that's 1% or less.
Yeah. I think I probably know thousands of investors at this point, and I would say definitely 95% started with the house hack. And even if they didn't know they were house hacking, even some of the older guys, when house hacking wasn't a term and it wasn't a book, they started out like that. But Andrew,
Yeah.
I don't want to like, such good value here, right? Talking about subject to private lending and all this kind of creative ways to be like a real estate investor. I think it's huge. But I want to get back a little bit to kind of your story. I think we kind of left off about 2015 or so, when you start after the short sales season was over, and the market started to pick up a little bit and interest rates started falling. What was your strategy then? Like, how did you end up kind of coming over to Kansas City? When did that transition happen?
Okay, so we're still in 2010.
Okay.
The short sale market has been nuked, but at the same time, the real estate market is still in the gutters. At that point, we had a friend who was investing in different cities all over town. We'd kind of given up on short sales, and we were sick of flipping. We flipped 200 houses, and we made a profit, but not really, like, not much. We kept it going too long, and the operating costs went into the red. So we were looking for another angle, another approach. And so a friend of ours was investing out in various cities, and he kind of settled on Kansas City as the one he liked the most. And we took a trip out here with him, and it's like the house, the properties were much cheaper, and the rents were less, but the rent to cost ratio was much better. And my family was originally from the Midwest. I've got grandparents and uncles and aunts all over Kansas and Missouri. And so it's just kind of like, this makes sense. We want to get back into buy and hold. Cash flow is much better out here, and so let's do this. And so we basically kind of, I made the trip out here at the very beginning of 2011, and then my brother Philip joined late in 2011. And I kind of took on the acquisition, and he eventually took on the property management. We started looking at apartments. But Kansas City is a very sprawled town. I think it's the most sprawled city in the country, actually. I heard that somewhere. I haven't verified that, so don't quote me on that. But it's very sprawled. Any of those like urban people, those people who are like really against like cars and like traffic, they want like the metro and whatever. Kansas City would horrify them. But so there's many more houses here than apartments, and we started also kind of in rougher areas of town. We took not consciously, but kind of unconsciously took some assumptions that just about campus rentals to areas that we weren't really ready to invest in, and so we kind of got burned on a few of those and moved away from some of the tougher areas and apartments. And we were like, our private lenders that we had found in Oregon were all for houses. They were lending to houses, and then we were selling them. And then we just kind of switched that to the Burr model before we even knew, the Burr model even had a name. That's kind of what we were doing. And all of them said, I think we had 6 go-to lenders. All of them said no, we're not going out to the Midwest. And then all of them changed their mind and said yes after a while, especially when they saw the prices, the rents. Because back then prices were obscene in some areas. We were buying houses for $25,000, $30,000, putting $20,000 into them and stuff like that. But so we really got into buying a lot of houses, and all of them from banks, like 90% of them from banks. And we were going HUD, Fannie, Freddie. Those 3 covered about 80+%. And we were buying, and we'd go on these tours, and we just look at, we'd look at 15 houses. We'd make 15, some duplexes, some stuff like that. We'd make 12, 13 offers, and we get 1 or 2, maybe we get 2 of them. And then we just kind of started going from there. Occasionally we'd buy apartment complexes and things like that. Financing was really, really tricky. And that's one of the things I think that's important to remember. Real estate markets there's always a problem. There's either, because in 2000, I wax nostalgia for prices back in 2011, 12, 13. And but at the same time, we weren't getting any bank loans. The only the bank loans we were getting. Well, I used to say this as if it was obscene. Now it's like I actually wouldn't mind them that. But it was like 6.5%. One bank, we had one bank, 6.5%, 15-year amortization. But they'd only loaned at appraised value if you owned it for 2 years or more. If not, they'd only loan at your cost into the property. And so we pretty much, this was the only bank we had. Everybody else said no to us. And so we were just piling up private. So it kept us on our toes. We kept looking for more and more private lenders. And we ended up having a lot of property. We had a lot of houses and small multifamilies. And we were just kind of going from there. And then finally in 2015, the dam burst and banks started lending again. And then that was when we really, and that at the same time, we also stumbled across a portfolio of 97 houses that we were able to put together an acquisition of with the help of seller financing and bringing in a partner and doing technically a tenant in common, but would be almost a syndication. It would be like a syndication. And that kind of was when we kind of took the next step. And since then, we've bought a lot of portfolios since then, and that's kind of been another niche that we've gone into. I think it's kind of I know we're going off on a bit of a tangent here, but I think we are well situated. We're not like the hedge funds that were buying 100 houses in really nice neighborhoods, but we're not also the smaller investors buying one house at a time. So those portfolios of 10 to 20 that investors had gotten put together over however many years and we're looking to sell out, we've found a good niche in buying those, especially by taking a lot of our private lenders we have, using them to borrow on the properties, and then just basically, refinancing them with banks as soon as we can.
So the problem you solved back in 2010 when there wasn't any money, like you got these private lenders, and now it almost feels like that's the bedrock, that's the foundation of your business now, which is now allowing you to buy 90 something, some odd units, which you really, it's going to be hard to find a bank to lend on that 20%, and you probably got to put down millions of dollars yourself, right? And so it's just great how no matter what problem you're solving, you can leverage that in the next cycle or whatever that is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, there's always, it almost goes with it. If there's too much money, that means that prices are too high. If prices are too high, then if price, and vice versa. So it's like, a year or two ago, I was pretty much saying, just if you don't own a house, just find something to buy. Like, because even though you're going to overpay for it, if you can get a 3% mortgage and for 30 years, like, it will eventually be worth it. Don't go insane, but yeah, I know the market was incredibly hot, but still find something to buy. Nowadays it's a little trickier because this might be the toughest market to invest in that I've seen, just because the prices are still pretty high and interest rates are also pretty high. So what are the angles? One, I don't think house hacking is off the table, especially if you can still do a deal, find one that's there. There's more motivated sellers. You can still get a bank loan. And you just plan on, hey, whenever rates come down, you can refinance, and then you can move on to the next one. I do think like trying to time the market is usually a fool's errand. I think the best example of that I'd give people, like, this market is too tough. And I agree, this is the toughest, like the hardest market to enter that I've seen since I've been investing in real estate. This is probably the hardest market to enter, other than maybe right when the crash started. Well, the crash started and there was no bank loans at all. But at the same time, like, I think that the anecdote I'd give was when COVID started. You remember, every real estate investor, everyone, all these experts, including me, unfortunately, everyone said the market's going to collapse. And it's like, it was just one after the next. Like, I remember somebody like on Twitter, like they added me. They mentioned they mentioned me in their tweet. I'd never know this person, like, like, this person, like, went into hiding because of this article I wrote on the Burr method. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And it was like, because, like, it's like, oh, everyone knows that real estate is about to collapse. Everyone, this guy's going bankrupt. He was telling people how to buy houses with no money down effectively. And I was like, well, no, we're buying with the large equity position where our portfolio is fine. I'm bracing, but everybody else is too. And I think that's just kind of a good anecdote. It's like, you think what's going to happen, but usually, you have to have some humility here. The only time I was 100% sure that something was going to happen was that interest rates were going to go up in the middle, early last year, or late 2021. And that's just because they had to. There was nowhere for them to go, and inflation was higher than interest rates, and so of course they're going to go up eventually. But because of that, you don't know if this market is going to be kind of like this for quite a while. It could be like this for 2, 3, 4 years, and yeah, it might. And even if you get in, like, if you get in now and you have to refinance a year or two from now when interest rates come down, and that's an extra set of fees, I still think it's worth it to start looking now. You might have to settle for something. I think one of the things about investors, real estate investors, with regards to getting into real estate is you need to be willing to live in a place that's below your means. That's not maybe ideal, because you can buy that versus renting. You can rent something nicer, but you can buy this. You buy a property that can become an investment property later for you, and that's going to work in the long run. And again, that kind of goes back to what you're saying. Like, we were building up private lender base that allowed us to do these portfolios much more easily. Whereas if we hadn't needed that private lender base, maybe we don't find it. Maybe we don't have enough to be able to kind of, line up 12, 13, 14 private loans at one time to be able to purchase a portfolio. At the same time, if you rent out that nice home now, instead of buying a home that's not nearly as nice as you would like, or as you can afford, a couple of years from now you might not have the equity to refinance and then pyramid up to the next deal, because you've paid it all away to the landlord kind of thing.
Yeah, Andrew, I love the point you make that like no one has a crystal ball, right? Like there's absolutely no way
Yeah.
you can tell exactly what's going to happen. And it's all about being conservative, understanding your buy box and knowing what meets your criteria or not, right? Like at the
Mhm.
end of the day, rates, let's just say they somehow magically drop to 3% at the end of the year, then everyone's going to be rushing in and buying again, right? But you can always identify like what you can control and you can base your, purchasing criteria off of that. And even if that
Mhm.
means the buy box is shrunken down a little bit right now, like you said, you don't know for the future, so just focus on those things you can control now. So yeah,
Yeah.
great point you
I,
make
I
there.
Yeah, I think it's a time to be a bit more conservative, and it's certainly, I would say, not to reach, not to be desperate to buy right now. But I would definitely not say. I had friends in 2015 who tell me like, they bought their second rental, but they're like, what, I'm going to wait to buy anymore until the market corrects. And it's like, the market didn't correct for 7 years, and so far it's corrected like, what, 5%, and even then they're almost like trying to bring it down, and you just kind of know like when they bring rates back down, it's just going to start to go up again. So yeah, I don't think sitting on the sideline is a good idea, but you do need to to keep your buy box in mind and not reach, and it's a frustrating market because it's just like unlike say a year ago, when particularly for your own home residence, if you're house hacking, where I'd be like, you don't really need a good deal, you just need to get into a property at a not a bad deal because the interest rate makes up for it. Nowadays, yes, you do need a good deal. You don't want to be reaching for anything now. So it's definitely a market that preaching patience is very important.
Super awesome, Andrew. Well, hey, dude, what you've been like, this has been a super valuable episode. Just perspective of markets and kind of where we're at and where potentially we're headed. And I think you're right. Like house hacking back in 2020, 2021, when interest rates were 2-3%, it was a no brainer. Now I still think it's a no brainer. Like I still think you should be buying a house
Mm-hmm.
every year, whether the rate is 2% or whether it's 15%. Because again, like you can obviously like it's like I feel like it's so cliche saying this, but like obviously you can always refinance later. But the thing is when those rates drop, that's when prices are going to skyrocket, right? Because people are going to be so
Mm-hmm.
used to seeing a $400,000 house with a $3,000 mortgage payment on a 7% interest rate. Well, if that interest rate drops back to 4% and now that is back to 2,100, well, what's going to happen? People are accustomed to thinking 3,000. That price is going to go up until they can make that $3,000 payment again, just like we saw. And so I don't know about you, but I want to be
Yes.
owning real estate when those rates go up, not
Yeah,
waiting
I
or
think
go down.
I think generally time in the market is beats timing the market, and so it's like, yes,
100%.
I think it's and it's I think one of the things in this market, you probably just have to you have to settle for less of a house than you'd ideally prefer. That's probably the
Mhm.
big thing. It's like you got
Yep.
to buy a smaller house, maybe not quite in as nice a neighborhood, that kind of thing. And then, but again, the plan with house hacking is to live there for a year or so and then move on to the next one, refinance and get it and rinse it out. So it's like this is not a I mean, this is the cost of doing business, and so,
Yep.
but yeah, I absolutely think that house hacking is still a good opportunity. It's probably important to say that because I think a lot of people kind of assume they missed the boat, like it's over, it's too late, and I don't think that's
Yeah.
the case because I think I, I think I agree with you. Like house hacking for 90+% of people is just the way to start or as a real estate investor. Like it's not like people say like what's the best way to start? It's house hacking. Unless your dad owns a real estate company and you want to get an internship for it, or you have a good amount of money already and you're looking to invest it, uh, there really doesn't seem to be a reason not to start with house hacking that I can think of.
Yeah. I loved like your facial
The rates
expressions.
aren't better
Yeah,
if you're
there's really
flipping,
not.
or
Yeah.
they're not better if you're trying to do a burr, or like so it's like yeah.
No, yeah, it's so true. All right, Andrew, we got to kind of head into the final part of the show here, which is the final four. But before we do you have any other parting words of wisdom for the audience?
Yeah, I mean, I think really pressing the time in the market beats time in the market. Sitting on the sideline is almost never the right thing to do. It is a market that I do think it's important to be aware. This is probably the most challenging market I've seen to invest in. It's not the worst market. Like the worst market to be in was like 2008. So it's like you should count your blessings in that regard. But I do think you just have to be You have to approach it cautiously, but there's still opportunities. And again, getting in the game is essential. The 0 to 1 is really key. Like if you want to find private lenders, getting to 1 is half the battle. Like I mean, it's like so that's why I guess even though rates are bad, house hacking still makes sense, and especially given that there are also more opportunities to do so because there's more motivated sellers.
Awesome, love it. So get in there. Timing them. Time in the market is better than timing the market. Love that.
Yes.
All right, Eric, you ready for the final?
Yeah, let's do it. Final
four. Little. It's all right. This is totally rehearsed
it's
and
our
not off
first
the
time
cuff.
trying this one together.
Yeah, this is the
right.
authenticity coming out. All right, Eric, kick us off.
There we go. I'm gonna kick it off. All right, Andrew. Well, for question number 1, what are you reading right now?
Yeah, I just started Jay Scott's Real Estate by the Numbers, which is quite good, although I'm just barely into it. And I got Nathan Brooks' The No Quitter's Guide to Real Estate, which is on deck afterwards. So Nathan's written a lot of good stuff before, so I'm looking forward to picking up that one. But yeah, particularly if you're looking for more analytical information, like how to analyze deals and wanting to do bigger deals, I think Jay Scott's by the Numbers is quite a good. Real Estate by the Numbers is quite a good one to pick up.
Love it.
Awesome.
All right, Andrew. Question number 2: what is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
I think the best piece of advice is probably one of either two things. I think one of them was from a Brian Tracy book a while back, and it just went like this. It was like, if there's ever something that you want to do, and the only reason that you can think not to do it is because you're afraid of how people will view you or judge you, do it. No questions, just do it. If that's the only reason you can think of why you're afraid to do it, then that's not a reason it should count. So I think that makes it simple with those sorts of decisions. I think the other one is basically just sort of, I've kind of gotten into the old ancient Stoics like Seneca and Cicero and Marcus Aurelius and those likes, and that is really focusing on what you can control and not worrying and just understand that big distinction. Stephen Covey was also a big fan of this kind of idea. Understanding what you control, what you can't control, and like really staying cognizant of that. And pretty much the one thing you can always control is how you view things, or at least you have the power to. It can be challenging too. So really, really keeping that in mind. And I think that's especially true as far as investors go in a market that is quite volatile. You can't control the market. You should make decisions based on that volatility, like for example, being conservative. But there's no point in worrying about it because you can't control it and you're not accomplishing anything by doing so. So while it's easier to say don't worry about such things because you don't control them, than to actually do that, just knowing that, just being aware of that, keeping that in mind, and be like, well, I don't control this, so why am I even doing this? So you're just saying that to yourself, almost like being your own psychologist in that way, has been very, very helpful, I think.
Okay. Yeah, huge mindset tips there. Love that. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Moving on to number 3, we're going to pull this and make this a deep question. What is your why?
World domination. I've always building something great and enduring, kind of that Jim Covey idea from both Good to Great, Built to Last. Those books were influential on me a lot, and my father too. Of building a great and enduring company, something that's more than just a large income or ability to go on fancy vacations or something like that, but something that actually is a meaningful legacy in that sort. And I'd like to start my own nonprofit as well and build that up too. I think having those sorts of building, great and enduring institutions that will live on past me in particular, I think is my that's at least my professional why. My personal why might be more on the family side the same way, but yes, that is my professional why.
Got it. Yeah, that world domination does sound pretty good. So might need to change my own why.
Yeah, just make sure you remember who interviewed you on their podcast and who should be on your side.
Of course. I'll give you a municipality or something like that to to control.
Yeah, just a small town or something. Yeah. All right, Andrew. What is the name of a childhood stuffed animal that you had?
I had some stuffed animals, but I don't think any of them had names.
What?
They I don't remember any. They either didn't have names or they were just like they're Minion 1, Minion 2, Minion 3. Just like the I don't
Can you tell you're a numbers guy?
I have no
You're
memory of
an anime guy?
ever name. Yeah, I have no memory of ever naming any of them. They were just there around. I mean, we have we'd set up me and my brothers would set up these large battlefields with all of our different toys and engage in these massive wars and stuff like that. So they were just basically cannon fodder. So yeah, I don't think they got names. They were extras. They got got blown up on Omaha Beach at the beginning of Saving Private Ryan, stuff like that. That was
Oh my gosh,
little violent, but
yeah.
Oh,
Man, clearly you had brothers.
man.
Clearly you're clearly you're a numbers guy. You're not the feelings of
Yeah.
naming things. And yeah. Awesome, man. Well, where can people find out more about you?
Yeah, I'm the easiest places. I'm Bigger Pockets. Andrew Syrios. I have a blog there that I write probably every other week. I have a YouTube channel, the Syrios Brothers, me and my brother. And then I also have a Substack, just this Andrew Syrios or the Syrios Brother is they kind of went together, but mostly on Bigger Pockets and YouTube would be the best places to find me.
Awesome. So yeah, go check out Andrew on Bigger Pockets. Go check him out on YouTube. Andrew, you've been writing for Bigger Pockets for a while. I feel like I've been seeing you post for years and years now. So you definitely got a lot of good content out there. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, thanks so much for sharing your story. Thanks so much for dropping some good knowledge here on some of the creative stuff and kind of probably a little bit more on the advanced investor topic, which is something that we don't get a whole lot of, which I think is really valuable to think about. Where to next after maybe you're in your third, fourth house hack. You start getting a little bit creative and start getting a little bit more fancy with some subject to some private lenders, stuff like that. So thanks so much, man, and we'll see you soon.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much, Andrew.
And that was Andrew Syrios. Eric, what'd you think of Andrew?
Oh man, what a gem. That was some great stuff that you talked about. We talked about sub twos, we got in some good stuff about short sales. There's so much stuff out there in the real estate investing world I haven't seen, and I just feel like he's seen it all, man. He's seen it all.
Yeah, he's got some serious experience, and again, I think what's funny is that he actually never house hacked, right? That's one unique thing about him is that most real estate investors house hack at some point, but he really started out. I guess he started with an intern with his dad. He grew up with real estate, and then he knew exactly what to do from then. And because of that, he has so much experience, and it just goes to show you that adding more tools to your toolbox can make you super successful. So if you don't, if you're house hacking right now and you're in your first or second one, get to 3 or 4. I think having 4 house hacks is a solid base. But in that meantime, start learning about subject twos, start learning about private lending. Start making yourself credible by writing a blog, creating a podcast, doing these things that add credibility, because once you've got credibility and you've got clout, then you can get on investors. You can get deals sent your way. You can get all these cool things. And so I think Andrew has done just that. And yeah, it's just an amazing thing.
Yeah, and I want to echo that point again of it's such a long-term game, right? You're not going to see that overnight success here with real estate, but you keep at it for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. All of the stuff that you're doing now really compounds. And I think that's really the amazing thing, right? Your networks, your properties, all of it just compounds over time. So yeah, lots of great stuff today.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, if you like this episode, if you like the podcast, make sure you share it with your friends. Please leave us a rating and review on iTunes. That helps us out tremendously. And yeah, hit us up on Instagram and let us know what you like. I'm the Fi Guy. Eric, what's your Instagram?
At Hello Eric U.
At Hello Eric U. Check out Eric. He's our Fi Team Seattle agent. So if you're looking for a house hack in Seattle or any property in Seattle for that matter, go ahead and hit up Eric. And we will talk to you guys soon and see you all next week.
That's it for this episode of Investify. We hope that these nuggets of real estate wisdom lead to more savvy financial planning and a clearer path towards financial freedom. For more content like this, subscribe to the show at investify.com. Don't forget to leave a rating and share it with your friends. Together, we can transform more real estate newbies into successful and clever investors. Thank you so much for listening. See you on the next one.